Yeah.
So the answer to the question is, yeah, do a top-down, understand all the basic concepts, but don't worry about details. Details will come and solidify in your mind when you actually use them for programming.
So we have to learn as we need. That's a
Yeah,
summary.
as you
Yeah.
learn
So
on demand.
and the next is, mostly people ask is when shall I? This is in job perspective. When shall I actually start looking for a job? When you have a degree, when you are in college, obviously by third year or fourth year, you have to start looking for a job. So when I'm a self-taught developer, I myself may not know when I'm a good or confident in a language, or when I'm ready to face the interview. So when actually should I start looking for or applying for jobs?
Yeah,
How
I'm going to
much I
give a
should?
very funny reply is that you
Mhm.
start when you think you are ready, right?
Okay.
You may think you are ready, but the world may not think you are ready, right? The people who pay you money. So what you do is, the best way to do it is maybe initially join as an intern
Mhm.
in a company when you're still in school or college or wherever.
Mhm.
And when you're an intern, they don't expect you to produce production code. Nothing critical is going to happen. In some places, but they will also teach you, and
Mhm.
they'll give you a specific set of problems, and which you will learn. And nowadays, I think a lot of big companies are getting people at the third year, second year, third year itself as interns, putting them through a program. So by the time they come out, they're like they at least know about this company's problems, how to solve them, and all that. Let us say you're a beginner. Let us say you did BSc Physics or
Mhm.
mathematics, and then you came out and you looked for jobs. You wrote as many bank exams as possible, and then you even tried one or two jobs, and you're not happy with any of them, and you decide, okay, programming, everybody's making a lot of money in programming, I'm going to become a programmer. You go to a course, learn Python, do some practice examples, practice, and then you do some simple projects and all that sort of stuff, and you think you're ready. So
Mhm.
first thing you can do is very simple things. There are in the internet, you go and say, interview questions.
Mhm.
So there are 50 interview questions for Python programmers. So you don't cheat. Take those interview questions as if somebody is giving them. See whether you can answer how many of them. Chances are in the beginning, maybe 5 to 7, you may be able to answer.
Mhm.
Okay. Then say, what happened to the rest of them? Go learn. And then come back and take a different set of questions. Because if you take the same question, it's almost like mugging up, right? Now you know the answer to this question.
Okay.
Take programming problems as interview questions.
Mhm.
And then that you won't remember, because programming problems, any program that is more than 5 to 10 lines of code, nobody will remember, right? That's what
Mhm.
most of us students struggle with. They think in labs they have to mug up programs and go and reproduce them in the exams, kind of stuff. So what will happen is, when you take something like this and then so okay, and there are hundreds and thousands of problems in interview questions. The second, another way to test it is just go to your programming beginners forum. Quora has one. You can go places like Reddit, though initially I won't recommend it. Um, there are all these forums where people are asking questions. Beginners are asking questions, and you want to answer the questions and say, "Hey, this guy asked this question. Do I know the answer to this question? And if I don't know the answer to the question, how do I find the answer to the question?" Then I go learn, try it out. When it works, go back and answer the question. The person
Mhm.
will be very grateful.
Mhm.
Because such people normally are people who don't want to look up and spend the time. They want an answer readily, but some of them may also want multiple answers to see whether their answer is as good or better than others. So that is another way. So anything that builds your confidence. So if you can confidently go and say, I learned some programming. Here are some projects I wrote. Here is the code. I can explain any of them. And I am capable of learning fast, or I'm capable of learning on my own without any help,
Mhm.
because that's what I've done in the last 2 3 years. Definitely, people will say, "Okay, come in as an intern for 3 months. Let's see what you can do, and if you do well, you know, they'll say, great, come and join," kind of stuff. And many of them are say, "What do you need to learn? I mean, What are the areas where you wish you could work? So you should go when you feel confident. What is the worst thing that's going to do or happen? You're not going to get the job.
Yeah.
But if you mentally say that I need to go to at least 10 interviews to get at least one job or 20 interviews or whatever, but each interview is a learning process. What did I learn from this interview?
Mm.
That when they asked this question, I was not confident in answering. When they asked this question, I was not able to answer. When they asked this question, I was able to answer. So you put it into three buckets and then you work on the ones which you are not confident to increase the confidence. Why was I not confident? Because I was not so sure. I knew a little bit, but not enough. But I tried to bluff my way through, saying as if I know, and they found that because people will always find that. Or this one I had never heard of. So let me go and Google it and learn it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I think that answers the most popular question asked. Like, can I be a developer without a CS degree, especially in
You
India?
can.
What's your thought on it? In India, is it possible to become a?
In US, I'll tell you, in many countries, but I know about US. US, 90% of the programmers are not CS degree
College? Yeah.
holders.
Mm-hmm.
They don't wait. They think life is too short. So by the time they drop, many of them drop out of high school and they get a parallel degree. They go to a community college, educate themselves, and in parallel they're working. And many of them in high school itself are writing programs, kind of stuff. In India, there was a period of time that Google would not hire anybody other than PhD or masters. IBM won't even touch anybody because they're like research jobs. You need a certain mindset, certain level of maturity, certain analytical skills and all. But today, they'll hire you if you can demonstrate that you have programming ability.
Yeah.
You don't have to have a CS degree at all. In fact, I know a lot of institutions in Chennai which hire students, diploma holders, like from polytechnics, who have done a 3-year course like BCA, Bachelor of Computer Applications, not computer science.
Science.
So there is a difference. All they want is, and I've seen some really good students. In fact, one of my first hires, I remember I went to this place called NTTF, NATO Technical Training Facility. It's originally based out of Kerala, I think from Telcheri. It's, I think, Swedish organization. They do a lot of interesting vocational training programs. And they had a Chennai unit, and my friend was a director in the Bangalore unit. So he asked me, hey, why don't you go take a look at the Chennai unit? And I went there, got an intro. I walked into this class, and they said, oh, special lecturer is coming from somewhere. He's going to teach. Or I said, I'm not going to teach anything. You guys are being taught enough. But let me ask some questions. How many of you have ever written a program that is more than your assignment? Some 10 people raised their hands. How big was the program? Is that how many people wrote a program that is more than 100 lines of code? Actually, lines is not a very good metric, but I had to pick some metrics. So some 2 guys raised their hands. So I asked these guys, what did you write? One guy said, I wrote a tic-tac-toe game, and another guy said, I wrote some other game. I said, okay, you 2 guys, I'm going to interview you. And then I interviewed them and I selected them as interns. And as soon as they graduated, and they became one of those guys was so good, but he had a lot of problem with the English language because he came from Vellore and his parents were like, his dad was a tailor. So the parents are not educated, so they were not comfortable speaking English. So I said, listen, if you don't mind, every morning and evening we'll chat. And only in English. And if you make mistakes, I'll point out the mistakes. It'll hurt in the beginning. But assume that it's a teacher teaching you stuff. And I'll try to not point out every error, and I won't point out every error, but I will point out most of the ones that you find, and I'll explain to you why that usage is wrong. He said, okay, sir. So we used to chat in the morning for half an hour or 1 hour, chat in the evening, mostly about the work he is doing. So since I already knew programming, a lot of things is about programming content. He got better and better and better and better and confident. Then he was assigned to a project. So he worked with me for some time, and then he wanted to work with a bigger company. So one of my friends was running a big company. I requested him to hire him. He was already popular there because he was sitting in that company only and working. He's now then they put him on a US project. The customer loved him
Mhm.
because he was so super. And customer didn't care whether he had a DCA. He said, I don't care. Any problem I come up with, you are able to solve it. And he said, can we get him a H1 and then move him to US? Then he moved to US and now he lives in California. And his entire family situation changed because of his learning. And he started with very humble beginnings. The only thing he had going is persistence. He would work very hard. But more than anything, the eagerness to learn and take a lot of criticism in the process. Whenever people say, okay, and I also told him, listen, don't get offended when somebody points a bug in your program. They're trying to help you. Why should they point a bug in your program? Unless, of course, it's a code that they're going to ship to your customer. Your manager is definitely going to be like harsh, saying that we can't ship bugs to them. So once he had that in his mind that everybody is doing everything to make him a better programmer, his attitude changed and he became really good. So what I'm saying is that some amount of logical thinking. So initially there is a barrier to entry because the language, but every field has its own language. You go to the hotel industry, it has its own language. You go to the medical, it has its own language, right? So you need to kind of become familiar with the vocabulary. And anybody from who is not willing to give up and has access to internet or all these kind of things to practice, or access to a computer. It doesn't even have to be internet, and access to somebody who will help them, some mentor who will take pity on them and say, okay, or who came like them, and so they remember how they got help and they're willing to help.
Yeah.
In addition, we do all these build to learn kind of sessions where we bring people into a group, and people who know help people who do not know. And we set up communities of practice. That's what.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So one way of, again, getting a job is applying to companies, your resume getting shortlisted, interview, and then you say you became a developer, and then you work like lifelong in that company or any other company. Again, you repeat the process. So that is one way of being in the software industry. But then there are people who are advocating about making an online presence, being part of communities, making open source contribution. So how important it is, online
See,
or
that is how
offline?
you become visible, right? I know students who were. So I'll tell you the story of these two students. They were in Chennai Geeks. They were running it for some time. I won't name them for the simple reason, one boy and one girl, and both of them from SSN College. They know who they are. If they hear this podcast, they'll know. They were. We ran a hackathon in SSN College called 32-hour Startup, and they were not even participating in the hackathon. Their job was to print badges, make sure that we are supplied with snacks and drinks and all, because they didn't know what a hackathon was. They wanted to just watch, and they were volunteers. They watched people working. And the 32-hour Startup means you work non-stop for 32 hours and build something and demonstrate it. And at that particular year, we mixed some of the industry programmers with student programmers and then put them all together. And they got so inspired, they started learning to program. They started participating in this next version of 32 hours. They organized and ran the next version of 32 hour startups. Then they came to Chennai Geeks, which is a group in Facebook group. We used to have live events, like every month. We used to meet and talk about programming and languages and all that sort of stuff. And then they suddenly decided that they found this problem, and then they wanted to solve it. They built something and put it in open source. They got a call. They're still in fourth year. They got a call from a US company saying that we have seen your GitHub code. You guys have done a very good job. We want to hire you as interns, 20 hours a week in the final semester when they're supposed to do the projects. Can you get an exemption from doing the project because we'll give you the project? This is a subsidiary of a large auto manufacturer and paid them some huge amount of money by Indian standards at the time. And then they offered them a job at the end of it. Within first 1.5 years, they're getting about more than a lakh of rupees. And then they continued their open source contributions, went to competitions in Europe and in Gulf, won some of the competitions, won a laptop. And so the trajectory, both of them are in US right now. One, I think, one of them moved to Canada, but both of them went to US. One person works for Microsoft. So this is completely, nobody told them how to do this kind of stuff. They're self-made programmers. And you will see stories of these self-made programmers more and more everywhere. All you have to do is take the initiative, work hard, because it will not pay back immediately.
Yeah.
But increasingly, this is what is becoming the recruitment method for lots of companies. They look for some of the best contributors in open source, because they can go and read their code, and then they look at the code, they can see what it is, and then no interview. They just get a job offer most of the time. And so I think it is important. And also, you have seen in Build to Learn, we have people from the industry mingling with students. Students will not get that exposure sitting inside college or even going to an internship in
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you tell more about Build to Learn, how it works, so that
so
give a context?
We had this, I was spending time with college students, and I found that many of them were very smart, but none of them had any practical experience of programming. So came up with this idea saying that, hey, why don't we just half a day every month, get all the people in one place and let them build simple applications. And they can come there with no knowledge of programming, we'll teach them programming. If they have a little bit of knowledge of programming, we'll give them a small problem to do it. If they don't know, if they're alone, we'll pair them with somebody else who are in this similar situation. If they have doubts, we'll give them a mentor to solve the doubts. And so this kind of multi-threading, it is free. Unfortunately, companies like PayPal, Kriya, which is Praveen Shekhar's company, and a few others, they all gave us space in the very generous. They gave us large space, internet facility, snacks, everything. And we just went there. We just announced it on Facebook and a couple of other forums. People started coming. Initially, there were only about 10, 15 hardly could fit into the room, and then started growing. At one point in time, we were like 70 people or 100 people and all that sort of stuff. And we said, you come and build anything. We started with programming initially, but finally said, why should we restrict to programming? If they want to build hardware, let them come and build hardware. And a few girls from Hindustan University came and they actually built a robot. And all the programming help was given by the community there. And then I think this girl had this beautiful problem saying that I want to build a robot that looks at cookies, and then any cookie that is burnt, I want to push it out of the conveyor belt. So that only quality control robot. And then, which means computer vision, color sensing, motor, robot. She didn't know any of those things. She gathered together 4 friends. And then the group, everybody would take interest in the thing, and everybody pitched in somewhere. And they finally built this over 3-4 sessions. So that community grew, and there are similar coding clubs everywhere in the world. And these are all people with the same level of interest. And there are writers clubs. People get together to do write short stories, novels, science fiction stories. It's not just unique to programming itself. Programming, but requires a lot of practice It can't be done in isolation. So we're having a group and having a mentor. So what we do is we always invite a bunch of mentors to come in. They can come and do whatever they want. We introduce the mentor to the whole crowd. We ask each person who has an idea for a project to talk about the project, and then ask them what help they need. Somebody would say, I need front end help, I need back end help. Then we'll say, okay, here are the mentors, here are the people. You pair yourself, and then they form into small groups and they work. And I think for 1 year it ran really, really well. Then we started getting into problems in terms of getting the space. Then we thought, if you go virtual, it can be much larger, but this virtual business doesn't work that well in initiatives because there is a magic in seeing people, working with them, chatting, drinking tea. Orangescape was one of the hosts, and then ThoughtWorks was another host. These are all big companies, medium to large companies in Chennai, and they were so generous. And they're all, because I think some of these people who were in charge were all part of Chennai Geeks, and they've seen they wanted to support the community. So it was pretty good. Now it's kind of dwindled down because of COVID. People are not meeting, and online, too many. I think people are zoomed out, in terms of fatigue in online, because the education is online, the chatting with friends is online, so people are not participating in online events. But I'm looking to times when we can all get back together, yap about programming. Some of us just went there, sat and just talked about programming projects and technologies and things like that. We didn't build anything, right? Because we went there to hang out with the rest of the community and then help whoever needed help, kind of stuff. So our motto was build to learn to build. So that's like a recursive cycle for club.
Yes. So
when you learn, yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. So that's also a place to find mentors, right? You said mentors are one important factor. So people who are not in cities and, as you said, virtual meetups are not as effective. So what are the other options to find mentors other than meetups?
One is Twitter, but you have to follow the right people. Another is forums like Quora, where you answer questions. Stack Overflow, where you answer questions. So first principle is that you don't just go there and always ask for help. It's a community where you contribute. So I'll go back to one build to learn story, right? Suddenly I got a call from this guy. He said, he connected with me on LinkedIn. He said, I am from College of Engineering, Gindi, same, alma mater. And I said, what do you want? And he said, my daughter is studying there and I wanted to learn programming. So can I come and check out what is happening in Build to Learn? Parents having girls. So they don't, they're not used to this concept of people mingling and building things and all that. And he came to Praveen Shekhar's office, or he came to ThoughtWorks, I forget where, Orangescape or something, and brought his daughter. And first year, I said, do you know any programming language? She said, none. I said, okay, here is a tutorial, the book. You learn Python programming. You have any questions, you ask this other girl who was already sitting there, who has been there for a couple of times. The interesting thing is she came for 2 or 3. She started gaining confidence. Basically, very intelligent and dedicated person, right? And then suddenly, in one of the sessions, I started talking to even a younger guy. I said, who is this guy? Where did he? He said, a high school student who wanted to learn programming. He landed up somewhere, heard about Build to Learn, landed up there. I said, what are you doing with him? I said, I'm teaching him Python. And she was learning it 3 weeks or 3 months before, 3 sessions before. And then she is teaching this high school student. I said, wow, this is all that we need for sustaining, right? So what happens is, this is a very interesting story because a lot of people who receive also want to give because they know they're kind of grateful to the community. And we don't charge any money for these kinds of things. So they can't pay us. So they just go and contribute. So they ask, what can we do? I said, go teach someone. Every one of you teach at least one or two people, and so that's how the community grows. Um, Going back to your question, what is the question? I forgot.
How do we find mentors other than VTIFs? Like people who
Yeah.
doesn't have access to physical,
So, correct. But the thing is, the problem is the ratio of mentors to mentee is very, very high. One is that I think if you're some of the good colleges will find you mentors. And lots of times you don't really need mentors. In the initial stages, you need coaches or you need peer learners. See, it's much easier to get 3 students together if you're a student and work on a project than find a coach who will coach. We start with obviously the faculty members who are interested in programming. And then say, ma'am, sir, if I have doubts, can I ask? No faculty member will say no. Even if they don't know, they'll know some smart guys who can solve the problems.
Yes.
So they'll connect these two guys. Okay, I'll give you this person, go to him. Or I know this girl and she's very interested and she can help you. That's how they'll do. So they're good connectors. They need not. So there are all these people. The people who know resources, who are connectors, and people who are coaches, they like doing it and their way of giving back to the society. And then there are mentors who go even beyond. They won't do the coaching because they may not have a lot of bandwidth to do it, but they may say, okay, go read this book, go follow this learning path, and go meet these people, go to these forums, for example. That's how you do that. And the way you attract mentors, at least in Thai and a whole bunch of other places, even in non-programming environments, is if you start helping people, you become very visible. I know a lot of students who are very helpful to others and they become very, very visible. In fact, some of my initial hires in my previous startup I walked into this place to teach database because they bought a database product that we built. I had to train them. And then I found this student going around helping everybody. And I asked the owner, who is this student? He said, oh, he's a student. He's doing part-time masters. But he likes programming, so he solves everybody's problem. When they get blocked, he helps them. And I said, wow, fantastic. I said, do you mind if I hire him? He said, oh, yeah, hire him. He'll do much better in Chennai than in Trichy because this was in Trichy. I went and talked to this guy. He's a very shy, silent guy. He's the CTO of some large company right now. And BSc Mathematics or Physics, I forget. He was doing MSc. I convinced him that programming is better than doing MSc. Maybe I screwed his future, I don't know. But he came and he was an awesome programmer. And that teaching, the habit continued beyond that particular job. Like the thing quality that attracted me from him is that now he runs, a large engineering organization. He's like a mentor and a coach. And, he single-handedly built the technology of a company from very small group to a much larger group. And now there are a lot of other people helping him. So they are very visible. And when you go to hackathon, you see these people who would finish their work. And some people come there not just to work on their project and win a prize. They get that kick out of their thing after the first few hackathons. Later, what they're going around talking to everybody. We know, right? Ashish is one of those guys. He goes to hackathon. He's like always helping people. And everybody will be calling Anna and all that. And we'll be talking to him Tamil. He doesn't even know Tamil. And he'll be helping him code and all that stuff. So there are a lot of, the ratio is not as high as in terms of number of such people to number of people who need help. But you can see them in all these places.
So last question is coding easy? Can anybody do it?
I think everybody can learn. Absolutely no problem to a certain extent. So one of the things about programming is it's a skill like singing or playing a sport or being good at something, playing an instrument, drawing, painting, any of those things. You may have some innate ability to start with, but a lot of practice is needed for you to get somewhere. Okay. Unfortunately, what happens is you may not be qualified to get a job in that field because you're not good enough. The competition is very high and all that sort of stuff. Now it is a lot less of a problem than before. Before, unless you are BE computer science, nobody would hire you. Unless you are a bachelor of IT technology, even MCAs had problems finding jobs and all that sort of stuff. So if you don't find a job, what do you do? How do you keep the fire burning? So you participate in all these kinds of things. So anybody can learn. The people who shine, and there are stories, hundreds of stories of people who built small software companies, solo programmers, or maybe 2, 3 programmers. That's it. Built multi-million-dollar companies. Right? That is the other option we didn't even talk about. So I think if you like it enough, if you enjoy doing it, and if you are willing to put in whatever effort, you don't have to be working 14 hours all the days, all the weeks in a year. There are bursts of activity when a lot of work is required, bursts of time when you can be learning, but you have to enjoy it, and you should be willing to take on the challenges, and then so you need to be a self-learner. You need to put in the work that is needed. You should not get easily frustrated and give up. Okay, and you should love the outcome. That is, you're building something bigger, right? So if you have that goal, you don't really worry about Python syntax, code quality, or initially. It'll come. They'll all come with practice. So if your goal is to build things that are useful to others, you will definitely can get a job. And why you aim at a job? You can start your own company. You can help people. There are a lot of ways.
Thank you so much. I think we will address that point in another discussion.
Yeah, sure.
Building
Yeah, we
your
can do
own
that.
company. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sure.
thank you for answering all the questions in detail. I hope we'll meet again with such wonderful topics later in the
Yeah,
future.
great. Yeah, thanks for taking the time and taking the initiative to make it happen. I hope people will benefit from this and
Yes.
gain some confidence to step into the field. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. I will just end it.